Hello, party people, and welcome back. I'm like looking over to check my levels. Mr. Poolshot says, strange time to be seeing you. Yes, so now I am in Reykjavik. So I've been on so far about 6 month journey going through Iceland. We've been traveling all over Iceland, and I haven't been streaming because we really plotted this time of our lives. Erica and I picked out this 6 to 9 month window where I was going to work for 1 to 2 weeks a month and then travel for the rest of the time. We were going to basically take a retirement for 6 months and go traveling around Iceland, and that's exactly what we've been doing. At some point in the future, I'll do a photo stream, like talk y'all through some of the places that I went, and we've had a fantastic time going through the Central Highlands, the West Fjords. We've seen puffins, glaciers, driven on a volcano, just all kinds of cool epic life quest type stuff. So now for the first 6 months, originally we did this as a teleworker visa for 6 months so that we could be digital nomads. And there was some question about whether or not Iceland would renew it, not just my 6 month visa, but just the teleworker visas in general. But technically, because Iceland is in the Schengen area, they're not allowed to let people stay for more than 6 months on this particular kind of visa. So Iceland wanted us to stay longer, but wouldn't be allowed to do it. So they let us stay another 3 months as tourists, quote unquote. So we're here for another 3 months, but the 6 month vacation part of our time is over. Not that I'm going back to work yet either, but I'm not working out here, just kind of goofing off. Aaron says hi, howdy, Aaron. But now we have for the next 3 months, we have an apartment in downtown Reykjavik. And that view that you saw, I'll put it back up. Control C, Control C, K, good to see you again. That side window that you saw, that's the view out of my office here. So it's kind of nifty. We're right on the ocean in downtown Reykjavik. Switch back over to this guy here. So now I have, we have gig fiber and all that, and I can just leave my stuff in here, all my gear, my camera setup, all that, the fancy side cameras, so I can go back to streaming. Now, of course, the time's going to be a little bit weird because the time is based on when usually I like to stream when Erica's asleep, like before she gets up in the morning. And I'm usually up around 4 or 5 a.m. Reykjavik time. Reykjavik happens to be on UTC. So it's real dark 30 in the morning for most of my American viewers. And then even in the Europeans, it's going to be god awful early in the morning. I may experiment with some afternoon streams, Reykjavik time, depending on if I'm sitting at home not doing anything and don't have any work type stuff going on. So you can, hello, G Surgeon, good to see you. Where I see it's been so long that I can't remember where my buttons are at on my little stream deck here. Oh, usually y'all can't see the stream deck because of the way the camera's set up, but this is a little button that I use to change scenes and do sound effects and all that kind of thing. I still got to clean up the office a little. So I'm in a guest bedroom in the apartment that we're in, which, it's painting, bed, all that kind of thing. No, it's not open for y'all to sleep in. So if you have questions, you can throw in your questions up there. This is one, I'm doing this live stream just really to make sure that the gear works. I have about 2 hour project that I want to work on with y'all, where Eric Darling had a brilliant idea for SP Blitz. Which one is it in? I think it's in SP Blitz Cache. Yeah, it's an SP Blitz cache. And a brilliant idea for performance tuning, but it's going to take me about 2 hours to do a live stream on it because the first probably 10, 15, 20 minutes are going to be explaining the concepts. And I didn't want to do that as the first one because we're going to hit the ground running with that and just go in really deep technical concepts. Talking about how when you're analyzing the plan cache, how sometimes you can't see I'm not going to explain it here. It's going to be terrible if I try to explain it here, but I'll have it like a 2 hour live stream. I don't think I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm probably going to do that Tuesday or Wednesday. I might probably do it Wednesday. Erica's vaccination is on Tuesday, her second vaccination. Andrew, that's a good point too over there in chat too as well. I'm getting used to where all the pointing is happening at too as well. And so if you have any questions in this one, feel free to throw them up in the poll gab there, and whatever y'all vote on, we'll choose to cover. We'll probably only stream for like 30, 45 minutes. Now, one of you, Submethod, asked over in Twitch, Brent, I've thought of working as a developer in Iceland, but the language barrier worries me. How has this affected you? I don't have any Icelandic clients. When I came over here, I didn't want to, because I'm always really sensitive with the whole work visa type issue thing. I want to make sure that I'm absolutely bulletproof, 100% legally compliant. And so when I came over on the teleworker visa, the way the teleworker visa works is you have to be working for a company that lets you work remotely, but it's not necessarily trying to get Icelandic clients. My clients are all over the world. It's just wherever people happen to have performance tuning emergencies. Most of them tend to be in either the United States or Europe. If I had to guess, I'd say it's like 80% United States, 19% Europe, and like 1% Australia, New Zealand. That's about it. But so because I don't have any local clients, I don't have to worry about it. The vast majority of Icelanders speak some degree of English. There's some like folks you'll run into in service industries, whatever, that don't. But otherwise, English is pretty pervasive here. It's a pretty common technical language. Having said that, if you want to get a job in Iceland, it's extraordinarily difficult because they're fairly nationalistic. They want to protect local workers first, so they require companies to advertise available positions inside of Iceland before they try to fill them with people from other places. It's also a fairly expensive place to work and live. Iceland, if you're going to work in Iceland for an Icelandic company, odds are you're going to be living in Reykjavik. Check the cost of living in Reykjavik before you move there because it is pretty expensive. I would consider it roughly equal to Southern California. So if you're used to living and working in the Bay Area, then it's not such a big deal. But for the rest of us, it can be kind of a bit of a shock. Okay, so let's see here. The first question that we've got in here. Let's see this. Let's put this up on the, see if this works. It's been so long since I've clicked on PollGab. I don't even know if this is actually going to work. Let's see if it actually works. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. Click show question. Maybe it won't. Oh, hold on a second. Let me refresh my display and see if that works. To access the admin page, nope, I screwed something up. Hold on a second here. Let me go in and where is my PollGab link? There we go. Go put that up and then click on show question. Let's see if that, yes, I'm not completely incompetent yet. AK asks if the max character length field is an 80,000. 80,000? Oh, okay, from a business perspective, you know that the column needs to accept 80,000 characters. He said, would you, and that might be a typo. I think you might have meant 8,000. If it is 80,000, you would have to do varchar max. Because varchar only maxes out at 8,000 or else it's max. There's nothing in between. Says, would I do column length at 8,000 or would I do varchar max? So if it truly is 80,000, you have to do varchar max. If it's 8,000 exactly, I guess you could do 8,000. I get a little nervous about 8,000. It seems like an awfully high specific number, but you'll be better off just enforcing that it's only 8,000 because of also memory grants. SQL Server bases its memory grants for queries based on the size of the data type, not what's in it. So if you use varchar max columns, you're going to get artificially high memory grants for your queries. It's also going to cause you some problems around indexing. There are limitations with max columns that you don't have with other kinds of columns. So it's a really good question. Assuming that you meant 8,000, stick with the number 8,000. If you meant 80,000, then go use max. Let's see here. Next up, and folks, for whatever questions you want to see answered on the stream, upvote those. I will only go for the questions that actually have upvotes. If they've only been just posted with one vote and that's it, which is the person who asked it, then I'll think nobody else wants to see it and I won't answer those. Okay, so I'm going to switch around a display thing here, right here, just so that I can see the updated questions in over there. And then I know, let's see if I remember how to do that. There we go. All right, perfect. PGA asks, varchar max and nvarchar max are blobs. So when we say blob, what we usually mean is a large off-row object or a large object, binary stuff that you store in the database, images, files. That's usually what people think of as blob. They don't have to be binaries, like it could just be a whole ton of text. For example, in the Stack Overflow demo database, the questions and answers that people post are nvarchar max. So you'll sometimes hear people talk about that as blob. I try not to use the term blob because there's not really a clear definition amongst most of the audience as to what it means. So when I talk about storing binaries in the database, that's when I talk about like files, images, PDFs, Excels, whatever photo images. Whereas if I talk about nvarchar max and varchar max, people generally don't store files in those. You could if you do the encoding on the application side, but usually it's just text. People want to have diarrhea of the word processor and put all kinds of text inside there. FarSQL says, do you recommend using SQL variant data types at all? No. That was kind of easy, right? That was just the end of it. There's nothing more to add to that. No, I wouldn't ever recommend that. That's one of those things that seemed like a good idea a really long time ago if you were going to have the entity attribute value design of databases, but nope, SQL variant has no place in modern database design. Next up, Sharia asks, I want to understand more of the architecture of AlwaysOn availability group multi-subnet on Azure VMs. So realistically, you're going to have to read the documentation. So the problem with teaching AlwaysOn availability groups and cloud providers is that, first off, if you think about the percentage of people who run SQL Server, the percentage of those who use AlwaysOn availability groups, the percentage of those who do it on Azure VMs, the percentage starts to become so small that it would be like 15 of us here, and I say us, and it's not me, it's you. There would be like 15 of you in here that I would be doing training for, and it just doesn't pay as a presenter to go even build up knowledge on something like that when the audience is so freaking small. So where do you learn tools like that? Where do you learn when you want to learn something that hardly anybody else is doing to the point where they can talk about it? You learn directly from the manufacturer because people like Microsoft or companies like Microsoft have to write the documentation. They are willing to lose money. They are willing to lose money on the documentation because they have to go and build it. So go ahead and go learn from them directly. I gave up teaching AlwaysOn availability groups long ago for two reasons. One is that the percentage of adoption people who are really doing it well is fairly small. And I don't want to be on call for those people because really at the end of the day, AlwaysOn availability groups is about being always on. So when they break, they're gonna break after hours. They don't schedule breaks for 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The other reason is that it's so freaking complex when you factor in Azure VMs, Azure Managed Instances, AWS EC2, Google Compute Engine, on-premises, shared storage, local storage. There's so many variations of it that it really doesn't pay to do training on it. That's where consulting really pays off. Let's see. AK says the question is if I should break up the question, the columns from the app side so that it's 8,000 each. Oh God, no. No. Whatever the application it needs to store, just put that in the database exactly as is. Don't try to micromanage the contents of it. Greetings, Robert. Welcome to the club. Next up, let's see here. G-Surgeon says, Query Store shows dozens of plans for a certain stored procedure. Are those plans taken into consideration by SQL Server when a new plan has to be made after plan invalidation? No. So if SQL Server goes to compile a new plan, it doesn't check Query Store for alternatives. It checks Query Store to see if the plan is forced. Like if you forced an execution plan and you would only force one, you don't have the ability to force multiple plans for one stored procedure unless you get into the tricks like we talk about in mastering parameter sniffing. Greg, good to see you. Unless we talk about the tricks we talk about mastering parameter sniffing, where you like a tiny alter, or you do alters on the text of the query that you're running with dynamic SQL, or you have branching stored procedures that branch off to other stored procedures. But as long as it's just one stored procedure, SQL Server doesn't go back and check query store for the different options for plans and then say, I'm going to take this one out of the group. It's either it's going to pull a forced plan or it's going to compile a new plan from scratch. It would be cool if it did that, and Microsoft had a white paper around that kind of thing called plan stitching, but as far as I can tell, they've never actually implemented it in either Azure, Box product, whatever. I was excited that they were working on it, though. Farouk says, we're working on a multi-tenancy model, and we have a need to replicate some of the tables in each tenant to a different SQL. What is the best approach to do it? We can afford a small latency, 15 minutes. So let me, I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't think that you can get an answer quickly in a format like this, but I'm going to tell you the kinds of questions that I would ask a client. If a client came to me and said that, I'm going to give you the kinds of, don't bother typing your answers in because I'm not going to look. This is what consulting is for, because it's you and I could talk for like an hour just trying to talk through what all the requirements are. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the kinds of questions that I would ask a client so that you can think about what those implications are. How many sources do you have? For example, if you've got a whole bunch, if you're hosting thousands of clients, are you going to scatter those across thousands of SQL servers that are all sources that you need to replicate from? How many targets do you have? Where are those targets? Are they in locations that you control, like inside your own data centers, inside your own Azure AWS account, or are they in other places? What do you want to have happen if there's a conflict? Like if for some reason SQL Server or your app can't push the data from one place to another, and you're like, that would never happen. People can never change the targets. Oh, hell yeah, they can. If they're database administrators, if they're an out-of-control application, if there's locking happening, if somebody on the receiving side, that one of the subscribers has taken out a lock, like they're running a really long running report, there's an index rebuild happening, whatever, all those things can stop replication or change the underlying data. Are the versions of SQL Server all the same? How big is the data? How much is it changing? Is it something that changes every 10 seconds, or is it something that only changes once a day? Which columns out of the data set change? What do you want to have happen if latency grows beyond 15 minutes? Like, is it something where you want the reading queries to stop? Because sooner or later it's going to stop. Sooner or later your replication process is going to break. How do you want to alert the users that that data is out of sync? So that'll give you just a quick survey of the kinds of things that you'll need to think about when you go and build a solution like that, and hopefully something like that helps. Now you can just start to see, just based on the off-the-cuff, it's not like you and I planned this question at all, just based on the off-the-cuff the feedback that I gave you right there, that gives you an idea of how long it would take to plan something out like that. Jim Van Allen, good to see you. All right, next up, let's see here. So we've already answered that one. I'll go ahead and get rid of that. Let's see. Next up, Saul asks, oh, God. Oh, God, Saul. Oh. Saul asks, what are the main aspects to keep in mind when migrating a SQL Server 2005 database to 2019? If our main table size is about 1.6 billion records. Well, first off, Saul, it is the year 2021. SQL Server 2005, I don't remember what I was doing in 2005. I don't even remember what I was doing the last time that I worked with SQL Server 2005. I don't even remember when that was. It's been out of support for what, maybe 10 years now? So I have no clue, and you're not going to find anybody who has a fresh off the cuff answer for things like that. I would really get worried, not just about the size of the database, but what's your application doing anytime you forklift up a SQL Server version that's like 17 years old. I start to get really worried about any functionality that we're using, hard-coded things inside the database. Man, I can tell you horror stories about times when people have had hard-coded IP addresses inside their application, hard-coded usernames and passwords, just all kinds of things. Old ODBC drivers that were no longer being supported. I was dealing with one during a migration where they had a linked server going back to like IBM DB2, and that driver wasn't available anymore. So what you want to do is you want to grab yourself, if you look for the Microsoft SQL Server migration guide or upgrade guide that's actually published by Microsoft, and it hasn't been updated in like 5 or 10 years. There's one for SQL Server 2012 and there was one for SQL Server 2016. It's maybe 200, 300, 400 pages long. Not the migration assistant, and God bless you, Hannah. That's a good idea, Hanan. That's a good idea, but it's not going to work worth a damn, especially going back to 2005. But along those ways, if you search for stuff like that, there's a migration checklist. It's like 300-400 page long Word doc and PDF. That'll give you an idea of the scope of things that you have to worry about. So hopefully that helps. And then the last one that I'll hit, it looks like Andrew says, your sales have been very generous. Thank you. Thank you all as well. You've given several opportunities to help people learn. How have you been affected by sharing a name with the rock star in the Phoenix Project? So there's a guy in this book, The Phoenix Project, that's about IT, and it's basically teaching people how to do IT through the course of a fictional book or novel. I haven't read it, but I got a big laugh out of the villain in there is Brent. Phoenix Project was big, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, maybe something like that. And I remember hearing it a couple of times in the past, but since then I haven't heard it all that often. I love sharing a name with people from time to time because it's an unusual name. There just aren't that many people who have that name, so it's kind of cool to see. Oh, and then we'll do one more. Jan also asked a question. My friend has a missing index with many propositions that include all the columns. He knows that the issue's with the query, but is there any option to resolve this without changing the query? Absolutely. That's why I have my fundamentals of index tuning classes and my mastering index tuning classes, where we talk about those exact kinds of things. I wish I could explain it in 30 seconds, but of course that's why I teach 3 to 6 day long training classes. So if you go to brentozar.com and click training up at the top, you have all kinds of options there for fundamentals of index tuning, mastering query tuning. And I talk about that specific thing in both my mastering index tuning class and my mastering query tuning class. If you can change the query, you do the mastering query tuning class. If you can only tune indexes, we talk about that in the mastering index tuning class. All right, so that is everything. Hope that y'all had fun here in this quick short one. Looks like my streaming equipment is working, so I will take that as a win. And then the next time that you see me streaming, I'm going to be talking about the performance tuning gotcha issue that we're working on in the first responder kit. I'm going to be building a repro to go and reproduce that, show you what the problem is, the server performance problem that we're running into, and the approach that we're working on fixing it with in the first responder kit. So I will see y'all back in later. For my American friends, I hope you have a wonderful, happy holiday for I believe today's the business holiday for 4th of July, where you get to go and goof off. And I will see y'all next time. Adios.